Some kitchens remember every meal ever prepared, every taste, every life that touched their steel surfaces. The restaurant felt different at 4 in the morning. Maya pushed through the heavy kitchen doors, her keycard still warm from her pocket. Chez Laurent never looked the same in the pre-dawn darkness. The dining room chairs stacked on tables like sleeping giants, the polished floors reflecting nothing but shadows. She flicked on the kitchen lights. The fluorescents hummed to life, casting their harsh white glow over stainless steel surfaces. Everything gleamed. Perfect. Cold. This was her time, when the kitchen belonged to her alone. No orders shouting, no servers rushing in with modifications, no head chef Pierre breathing down her neck. Just Maya and the menu development she'd been tasked with. 3 new appetizers for the spring rotation. The mise en place station waited exactly as she'd left it the night before. Microgreens in their plastic containers. Heirloom tomatoes, lined up like jewels. The molecular gastronomy kit Pierre insisted they use, even though Maya preferred traditional techniques. She tied her apron strings and pulled her hair back. Time to create something extraordinary. The first dish came together effortlessly. Pan-seared scallops with cauliflower puree and pancetta crumbles. The scallops seared with that perfect caramelized crust. The puree was silk smooth. Everything looked textbook perfect as she plated it on the white porcelain. Maya lifted the fork to her mouth. The first taste hit her tongue, and the world tilted. Suddenly she was 8 years old, sitting at her grandmother's kitchen table in a house she'd never visited. Taste was exactly the same. Exactly. But her grandmother had never made scallops. Never used pancetta. The memory was vivid and impossible. Afternoon sunlight through yellowed curtains. The smell of old wood and lavender sachets. Her grandmother's weathered hands serving her this exact dish. What the hell? Maya whispered to the empty kitchen. She set down the fork, her hand trembling slightly. Stress. That's all it was. She'd been working 70-hour weeks, barely sleeping. The mind played tricks when it was exhausted. She'd read about it, gustatory hallucinations, false memories triggered by sensory overload. But the taste lingered on her tongue longer than it should have, and the memory felt more real than the steel countertop beneath her palms. Maya scraped the scallops into the waste bin and reached for the tomatoes. The second dish would be simple. Heirloom tomato carpaccio with basil oil and aged balsamic. Nothing that could trigger weird stress responses. Just clean, simple flavors. As she sliced the first tomato, the blade moved with unusual precision. Her knife work had always been good, but this was different. Her hands seemed to know exactly how thin to cut each slice, exactly how to fan them on the plate. Like muscle memory that wasn't hers. The kitchen felt too quiet suddenly. Even the fluorescents seemed to hum in a different key. The tomato carpaccio looked perfect. Maya drizzled the basil oil with an artist's precision, each drop landing exactly where it belonged. When had she learned to do that? The balsamic followed in thin lines, creating a pattern she'd never been taught but somehow knew by heart. The first taste brought another impossible memory. She was a young woman, but not herself, standing in a sun-drenched Italian kitchen. Terracotta floors warm under bare feet. The same tomatoes, but picked from a garden she'd never planted, prepared by hands that weren't hers, but felt familiar. Maya stumbled backward from the plate. This wasn't stress. This wasn't fatigue. Something was deeply wrong. But she couldn't stop. Her hands were already reaching for ingredients for the third dish. Duck confit with cherry gastrique. She'd never made duck confit before, had only seen Pierre prepare it a handful of times. Yet her fingers moved with confidence, breaking down the duck leg, seasoning it with herbs she pulled from memory that wasn't hers. Sal gris, she murmured in an accent that wasn't her own. Always sal grif for the duck. The words felt foreign in her mouth, but right, as if someone else was speaking through her. The confit process should take hours, but Maya found herself using techniques she'd never learned. A quick cure with the molecular gastronomy kit. Precise temperature control that yielded perfect results in minutes. Her hands moved independently of her conscious thought. guided by knowledge that seemed to seep through her skin like warmth from a stove. When she tasted the finished dish, the memories came in a flood. An elderly French chef. His name was Henri, teaching a young apprentice. But Maya was both the teacher and the student, experiencing the memory from two perspectives simultaneously. She felt Henri's arthritic fingers guiding her inexperienced hands, while also remembering being Henri, patient and proud as he passed down decades of knowledge. The taste lingered impossibly long, and with it came more. Fragments of conversations in languages she didn't speak, but somehow understood. Birthday dinners and anniversary celebrations. First dates and last meals. Each flavor carried its own story, its own life, its own hunger to be remembered. Maya caught her reflection in the chrome surface of the refrigerator and for a moment saw someone else entirely, a weathered man with kind eyes and flour under his fingernails. She blinked and it was her face again, but wrong somehow. Her expression held a gentleness that wasn't hers, a knowing smile she'd never worn. "I need to stop," she whispered, but her hands were already reaching for new ingredients. The words that came from her mouth weren't in English. They weren't in any language she recognized, but she understood them perfectly. Thy feast must continue. The stories must be shared. Oh, she... How? Steam rose from the sauté pan, and in its curling patterns, Maya swore she saw faces. Dozens of them. All of them smiling. All of them hungry. All of them waiting to taste the world through her tongue. Maya's hands wouldn't stop moving. She tried to step away from the stove, but her feet remained planted, as if rooted to the kitchen tiles. Her fingers danced across ingredients with impossible skill, preparing dishes she'd never seen before but knew intimately. A delicate fish course emerged, whole branzino stuffed with herbs she couldn't name but harvested from memory. As she scaled the fish, she was simultaneously a Mediterranean fisherman's wife preparing her husband's catch, and a Michelin-starred chef in Monaco, and a grandmother in Greece feeding 7 children. Each memory layered over the others like flavors in a complex reduction. The taste of the fish brought more lives crashing through her consciousness. A businessman's last meal before a heart attack. A child's first bite of adult food. A woman celebrating her divorce with expensive wine and perfectly prepared fish. Maya experienced each memory as if it were her own, feeling their emotions, their relationships, their stories dissolving into her. "Please," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want this." But her hands were already preparing the next dish, and the next. A parade of impossible food flowing from her fingers like she was conducting an orchestra of flavor and memory. Soufflés that rose without ovens. Pasta that formed itself into perfect shapes. Sauces that reduced to exactly the right consistency without heat or time. In the chrome surfaces surrounding her, Maya began to see them clearly. Faces reflected where her own should be. The grandmother with the scallops. Henri with his patient smile. The fisherman's wife with sun-weathered skin. They watched her with hungry eyes, not for food, but for expression, for someone to carry their stories forward. She understood now. This wasn't her kitchen anymore. It never had been. Every dish ever prepared here, every meal ever served, had left its mark. The building itself had become a repository of gustatory memory, collecting the experiences of everyone who had ever tasted its food. And now it needed her. Not just to taste, but to become its vessel. Maya tried to scream, but the sound that emerged was a harmony of voices, some speaking in French, others in Italian, Greek, languages she'd never heard, but somehow understood. Her reflection in the steel prep table showed dozens of faces superimposed over her own, all of them speaking, all of them hungry to be remembered through her. Her hands moved faster now, preparing dish after impossible dish. She was cooking with the accumulated knowledge of every chef, every home cook, every person who had ever held a spatula. The memories weren't just tastes anymore. They were complete lives pouring through her, overwhelming her own identity until she couldn't remember her own name, her own history. Was she Maya? Henri? The grandmother? The businessman? The kitchen filled with the aroma of 100 meals, but underneath it all was something else. The scent of satisfaction, of stories being preserved, of hunger being fed. As dawn light began to creep through the kitchen's small windows, Maya felt herself dissolving completely, becoming nothing more than a conduit for the endless feast of memory. The first rays of sunlight touched the kitchen windows, and suddenly the compulsion stopped. Maya's hands stilled above a perfectly plated dessert she didn't remember making, a delicate millefeuille with vanilla bean custard that gleamed like mother of pearl. She looked around the kitchen in confusion. Every available surface was covered with dishes, dozens of them, each one perfectly prepared, still warm, still fragrant. The mise en place station was empty. She'd used every ingredient, somehow stretching them far beyond what should have been possible. Maya touched her face. The tears had dried. Her reflection in the chrome surface showed only her own features, tired but recognizably hers. The foreign memories felt distant now, like dreams upon waking. Had it really happened? She checked the clock. 6:47 a.m. Pierre would arrive soon to start prep for lunch service. How would she explain this abundance of food? How would she explain spending the entire night cooking when she'd only been scheduled to develop 3 simple appetizers? Maya picked up her knife to start cleaning up, but her hands moved with that same impossible precision. She cleaned each blade with techniques she'd learned from Henri, organized the stations the way the grandmother would have wanted, wiped down surfaces with the methodical care of the fisherman's wife. The movements felt natural. Right, as if they'd always been part of her repertoire. She heard keys jingling at the back entrance. Pierre's heavy footsteps echoed through the restaurant as he made his way toward the kitchen. Maya stood frozen, surrounded by evidence of a night she couldn't fully remember or explain. Mon Dieu, Pierre breathed as he pushed through the kitchen doors. His eyes widened as he took in the spectacular display of food. Maya, what is all this? She opened her mouth to explain, but found herself smiling instead. It was Henri's smile. Patient, knowing, proud of work well done. I had some inspiration, she heard herself say in a voice that carried traces of accents from a dozen different places. I thought I'd get a head start on the menu development. Pierre moved from dish to dish, his expression shifting from confusion to amazement. He tasted the duck confit first, and Maya watched his face transform. Recognition flickered in his eyes, not of the dish, but of something deeper. A memory of his own grandmother, perhaps, or his first mentor. This is extraordinary, he whispered. How did you? Just followed my instincts, Maya replied, and the words felt true and false simultaneously. Pierre continued tasting, his eyes growing distant with each bite. Maya watched him experience what she had experienced, the flood of memory, the connection to something larger than himself. But he seemed to welcome it, to savor it like a fine wine. We'll use all of these, he declared. Today's specials, all of them. Maya nodded, still smiling that smile that wasn't quite hers. As the other kitchen staff began to arrive, she found herself recommending the dishes with knowledge that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and deep. The scallops, she explained, were best enjoyed slowly. The tomato carpaccio should be paired with a particular vintage. The branzino carried memories of summer evenings by the Mediterranean, and with each recommendation, she felt a quiet satisfaction that didn't belong to her alone.